So today's topic is again pumping lemma. So if you remember the pumping lemma, what was pumping lemma for regular languages? It was that if a language is irregular, you are able to find a pumping length such that whenever you pick a string in the language of length at least the pumping length, you can always find a breakup of that string in such a way that when you really pump a substring, especially sitting at the center, some middle, if you try to really pump over that string, basically if you consider that as a loop and you are pumping over that, still the string remains in the language, and that also gives you possibility of generating infinitely many strings, right? And when you have to prove that a language is not regular, you use this pumping lemma in a contrapositive way. So you used to say that, okay, or in the prove by contradiction. So you used to assume that, okay, let's language is regular, so it should follow the property, but it never used to follow the property, and therefore you end up saying that the language is not regular, right? So let's talk about the pumping lemma for context-free languages. We'll talk to the statement, but before that, let's talk about something very simple. So we discussed about Chomsky normal form, right? So what was Chomsky normal form? So Chomsky normal form is a standard way of writing context-free grammars, where it says that every production is of the type this, means the body is either two variables or the body is a single terminal, right? So there is a basic theorem that you can understand. So suppose that there is a grammar G given to you, right, and this grammar is in Chomsky normal form. So a context-free grammar is given to you and it is in Chomsky normal form, and the yield of a parse tree, right, yield of a parse tree, some parse tree, I don't know which parse tree, but some parse tree, we are not defining what is which is a string W, right? Now the lemma says that there is a context-free grammar in Chomsky normal form. Let the yield of a parse tree as per the context-free grammar is a string W. Then if the length of the longest path from root node is n. So there is a relationship between W and n, which is this. Okay. So let me rephrase this whole lemma. So given a context-free grammar in Chomsky normal form, if you are given a parse tree whose yield is a terminal string, let us add a terminal string W, then if the length of the longest path from the root node is n, so this is the relationship. In other words, what you are saying that whatever is the parse tree, the depth of the parse tree is actually n, right? Length of the longest path is what? Basically, if you go at first level, you are at one distance. If you go at second level, two distance. Third level, three distance. So likewise, length of the longest path is from root node is n. That means whatever is the longest branch in that parse tree, that is at the last node is at nth level. So to prove this, there are many simple ideas you can prove, right, in many similar ways, but the simplest proof is by induction. So let us prove it by induction. So the basis step is for n equals to 1. What do you mean by n equals to 1? That means the depth of the parse tree is just 1. So in that case, whenever the depth of the parse tree is 1, so there is a start symbol and it is pointing to A. That's all is the possibility, right? Because whenever the depth of the parse tree is 1 and the yield is a terminal string, you can never use any other type of production. Why? Because of the restriction of the Chomsky normal form. Because in a single step, the start symbol can only derive at terminals. So for n equals to 1, when you really put it there, what you get? 2 to the power 1 minus 1 equals to 2 to the power 0, which is 1. So whatever the yield you gonna get with a parse tree of depth 1 is definitely bounded by whatever is this value, right? So this relationship in this case is holding. Now let's take an inductive step. So in the inductive step, what you say? That okay, it is holding for any value up to, let's say, n. So does it hold for n plus 1? Or you can say if it is holding for n minus 1, so does it hold for other values, right? So let's take a parse tree for n plus 1 depth. So to have a parse tree of depth at least to, what will happen? To have a parse tree of depth at least to, the start symbol must be using one of this kind of production, right? It cannot use this kind of production, because if you use that, you will get just a parse tree of depth 1. So to get a parse tree of depth at least 2, you must be using s goes to 2 variables. That means there will be just 2 child from s. Maybe let's say some x and y. Now this x and y, further they will have their own sub parse trees, right? We say that okay, this is a parse tree with n plus 1 depth, right? Now if this is a parse tree of n plus 1 depth, so this overall, so certainly once you take from x and y, these parse trees will be of depth n, each of them. And as per the hypothesis, for n this property is already holding. So whatever the yield of x subtree, that is bounded by 2 to the power n minus 1, right? And the same is for y, that whatever is the yield of subtree y, it is also bounded by 2 to the power n minus 1, because both of these subtrees, the height is less or equals to n, right? At least one of them will be n, but both of them might not be. That's okay. So both of them at least follow this rule, that the depth is at least n. Then only you will get a depth of n plus 1 here. So the yield of the left subtree is this, the yield of the right subtree is this. What is the yield of the overall tree? Basically you add these two numbers. So yield of the final tree, which is of depth n plus 1, right, it is less or equals to 2 to the power n minus 1 plus 2 to the power n minus 1. Overall it is less or equals to 2 to the power n, and this was for n plus 1. So that's why you could have used here n and n minus 1, and you could have proved exactly that always this holds. So whenever you have a parse tree of depth n, you cannot generate a string of length more than 2 to the power n minus 1. from that parse tree. Is it clear? So if I have to generate a string W of length greater than say 2 to the power n minus 1, my depth must be more than n. That's all is the crux of this whole theorem. So this we will be using for our purpose in pumping lemma. Is it clear or anyone has any doubt? Is it clear? Anyone has any questions? Okay, good. Okay. So, whenever we take a grammar and check for context free, whether it is context free or not, if L is equals to phi or L is just epsilon, we don't need to worry about that, right? These are single strings and the length is very less, so we don't have to worry. So, our main question is for large sets, and that too infinite, because if it is not infinite, it is finite, so it is regular, and every regular language will become also context free. We will discuss about that too. So, coming back to the point, suppose that there is a context free grammar, right, and G. Now, the grammar may or may not be in Chomsky normal form, but there is a way to convert it into G dash such that G dash is given in Chomsky normal form. Now, the difference only that you will get that L of G dash is actually L of G minus epsilon, if epsilon was present. If not, then this minus epsilon will not have any effect on it, right? So, suppose that there is one such grammar. Now, this G dash that you got, it had V, P, S and T, this set. Now, let us say the number of variables in this grammar was M, in the Chomsky normal form one, right, not the previous one. So, in the Chomsky normal form, how many variables were present? Exactly M variables. So, we gonna use that. Let's say n is a number which is 2 to the power m. So, n is some, because again if you remember when we were defining the context free grammars, we said there will be finitely many variables, a finite set of variables, and once you convert into Chomsky normal form, although the numbers might increase due to the last step or in some other step, but all over it will still be finite. And when you take 2 to the power some finite number, you are gonna get a constant, again a finite number. So, n is a finite number which is equals to 2 to the power m. Now, let us take a string z which is part of L such that the length of z is at least n, correct? What is the value of n? 2 to the power number of variables. So, we are picking a string in the language of G dash such that this string is of at least length n. Good, no problem. Now, we are gonna apply the theorem that we just studied, that if you want to generate a string of length at least n, correct, what can you comment about the depth of that parse tree? See, we used a context free grammar in Chomsky normal form, we know the number of variables. Now, from there we got a value n, and we are saying that if you pick any string of length n, at least n, what can you say about whenever you try to derive parse tree for z, right? What can you comment about the height of that parse tree? Come on, think and let me know. If you understand that part, then I think we will smoothly transit from here. Can I say that depth of the parse tree will be at least m plus 1? Can I say that? Because if you don't say this, that means the depth of pass tree may be less than m plus 1, right? So less than m plus 1 means m or less than m. Let's say even if it is m, what is the maximum can you yield from it? If the depth of the pass tree is m, you can maximum yield is 2 to the power m minus 1 length string, while n is what? N is 2 to the power m. So 2 to the power m minus 1 is actually n by 2, and that too at most. So if you have a pass tree of length m, you can generate only a string of length at most n by 2. So whenever you are having a string of length at least n, certainly your pass tree is at least m plus 1. Right, because when you have m plus 1, it gives you that the maximum length string that you can yield is 2 to the power m plus 1 minus 1, which is less or equals to 2 to the power m. So if n, this string is of exactly length n, it can be generated by m plus 1 depth pass tree, but if the string is more, so you might need a bigger pass tree. So that's what we are saying, that whenever you take this relationship, that the length of the string is at least n, so this is giving that the depth of the pass tree must be greater or equals to m plus 1. Anyone has any doubt in this? Shall we go ahead? Everyone is clear with this up to this point? Okay. So let's try to visualize this whole thing. We said that this is m. We took n equals to 2 to the power m. We said that we are picking a string z, part of that grammar, such that the length of z is at least n. And to get this gives that in that case the depth will be at least m plus 1. Good. So let us say this is my start symbol and I am drawing the pass tree. So this is my pass tree. I have drawn using straight lines. You can use dotted lines or something like that. Okay, this is the pass tree, and let's say that this red line is denoting the branch that is defining the depth of the pass tree. What do we mean by that? That means this is the longest branch in this pass tree, right? So this branch is defining the depth of the pass tree, this red one. Okay, good. Now what can we say about that? So to generate or yield string z, the length of this branch should be what? Same as the depth, right? If the depth is at least m plus 1, this branch should be also of length at least m plus 1. That's why the depth is that. If the depth of the branch is this much, let's say this value is k. So I said that the depth of this branch, the longest branch, is k, and k is greater or equals to m plus 1. Okay. Then how many variables will be there on this branch? If k is the depth or the length of the thing, how many actually nodes will be there on this path? To have a path of length k, you should have k plus 1 nodes, right? So there are k plus 1 nodes on this path. One end is certainly the start symbol S. The other end is what? It's a terminal A or something like that, whatever, because it is yielding something. So two ends are fixed. How many are in between? So total k plus 1, 2 are gone, so another k minus 1. So if you try to renumber it, so even S you are numbering as A0, then this is A1. So if you will be coming up to AK. Sorry, if you are starting with A1, A2, so you will be coming up to AK. Okay, good. So there will be k variables on this path and one terminal. Correct? To have a path of length k, you will have k variables and one terminal, because total k plus 1 nodes will be involved in that. Because there are k variables and k is greater or equals to m plus 1, right, as per our assumption. How many distinct variables did we have? Only m. Correct? And here the number of variables on this path are how many? M plus 1 at least. Same as we were having in the regular language, pumping lemma for regular languages. Because using the pigeonhole principle, you can comment here also that on this path there will be at least one variable which is occurring twice. Let's say that variable is ai and aj in this order, right, such that I is less than j. So somewhere here ai is occurring and then aj is occurring. Correct? ai and aj. Now ai and aj are same. Correct? They are representing the same non-terminal, some non-terminal a. Good. So what do we get? Let us break this tree into the following way. So wherever you have ai, take like this, take like this from j. Now what I have done, the subtree, the subparse tree rooted at aj, which is the second appearance of that variable that we were talking about, and let's take the yield of that subtree as w. Before that, now if you see this yield of the subtree rooted at ai, it contains aj, right? So yield from ai contains whatever is the yield of from aj. So if you take the yield from ai, it will have some prefix to w and some suffix to w. So in the subtree rooted at ai, when you are taking the yield, it is giving you a prefix to this w as v. So this part is yield v and this part, let's say, is the yield x. Again, further from that, there is a prefix to the whole as u, and the last suffix is actually y. So what we are saying that if you try to see this, actually the string z got broken into u, v, w, x, y. What is u? What is v? What is w? What is x? What is y? Try understanding that w is actually the yield of the subparse tree rooted at the second appearance of that string, that variable a. What is v and x? If you would have taken the first appearance, and if you take the yield of the parse tree rooted at the first appearance of that variable, you will be getting a bigger string, right? Now in that bigger string, this smaller string is a substring, the w. So whatever is the prefix, we are calling that as a V, and the remaining, the suffix, we are calling it as X. So altogether the yield of AI is VWX, correct? Now what is the yield of the whole parse tree? It is Z. So now if you take out VWX as a small substring there, what will remain? The prefix some part and the suffix some part from Z. So that is U and Y, correct? Is it clear? The breakup, what is V, what is W, what is X, what is Y. So let us take a new page and try to redraw this image so that we have a better clarity. Okay. Let's take that this is the parse tree rooted at that node. Okay. We got a, so let's say this is the longest path, and on this path you got here as AJ, at this point you got AI, and that is the remaining one, right? So what was this one? This one was U, this part is V, this part whole is W, this part is X, and this part is Y. Okay, good. Now what we know? We know that AI is equals to AJ equals to A. So A can actually derive W, and A can also derive what? VWX. Yes or no? So A can derive just W or A can derive VWX because of the parse tree. This gives a very interesting understanding that if you take the same parse tree that you have taken here, this is your U part, this is your Y part, and this is your AI, right? But AI is also equals to A. So from this point, at place of deriving VWX, you may just derive only W. That is also possible, yes or no? It is a valid parse tree as per the grammar, because whatever you are deriving in the left is still those variables are present. Whatever you are deriving in the right, that is still present as the branches. From this node you are deriving VWX, but you can also derive W only. So if you just derive W, still it will be a valid parse tree, is still rooted at the start symbol, right? That means there is a parse tree that yields U, W, Y rooted at the start symbol, and it's a valid parse tree as per the grammar. So this should be part of LG dash, correct? Okay, let's take another example. Let's again get back to the same parse tree. Again, you had this is your U, this is your Y, now this is your AI, then you have V, then you have X, and this is your AJ, and AJ is equals to A. Now this AJ is equals to A. So at place of deriving just W, it can do what? At place of deriving just W, this AJ might use this whole subtree and fit it here, which means that this AJ is not just going to derive W, but it is going to derive altogether VWX. VWX, such that there is again one occurrence of AI here. Is it possible or not? Yes, why not? Because this AJ that you have taken, this AJ might work as AI at this point of time, because AJ and AI are both same, and they end up deriving VWX again at place of just W. Again, if you see, this is a valid parse tree as per the grammar, because we only said AI and AJ are same, and if both are same variables and same variables are deriving W and VWX, so when it was deriving W, it may derive VWX at that place of W, or when it was deriving VWX, it may derive just W. Yes or no? And therefore, now if you see this string, this is actually U V square W X square Y. And again, because it is originating at the start symbol, and you have what? A valid parse tree which is yielding this string, so this string will be part of the language. Correct? Similarly, let's say that this is the parse tree again, and this is your U, this is your Y, this is your AI, then you have V, this is your X, this is your AJ, and again it is deriving V, but this is not W, this is going another level down, and further another level down, and likewise up to K times. So that may give you a yield of U V to the power, let's say K W X to the power K Y. So you are deriving AI as AI again and again and again. So whenever you have this AI, it is giving you VWX. Next, when you reach to AJ, it is again giving you VWX, again VWX, K times, just like here it did 2 times, right? So when it is going to do that, you will have K copies of V all together in a contiguous fashion, and same will happen for X, and you're gonna end up having this string. And this string, again, this is a parse tree, valid parse tree rooted at S, so this will also be part of the language G dash. Anyone has any doubt in this? Okay. Now let us talk about 2 important properties for V and. So basically what we said, if you realize so far whatever we have gained here, so we said that whenever you take n is equals to 2 to the power m and you pick a string z part of the language such that this z is at least n, then this z can be broken into what? U, V, W, X and Y, correct? Whenever z is greater or equals to n, what you get? You get that the depth is at least greater or m plus 1, which results that there is on the longest path, right, you have a variable occurring twice, which will give you a breakup of the string in the following way, such that whenever you take any power of V and X together, still the string remains in the language, such that whenever you have this Z, if you take U V to the power I, W, X to the power I, Y, still it remains in the language this. So there exists such a breakup, Correct. For all values of I greater or equals to 0. Because for I equals to 0, what you will get? You will just get UWY. Right. UWY, which is the first case. UWY. If you say I equals to 1, that is already given because it is Z only. I equals to 2, which is U V to the power 2 WX to the power 2 Y, which is again present here. This is the case 2. And for any I in general, we can prove in the same way. So, this is holding. Correct? What is holding? That whenever you take a string of length at least n, you can find a breakup due to the repetition of a variable, such that the breakup, if you really do a pumping, there will be two substrings. If you do the pumping at the same time over both, still the string will remain in the same language. Something looks similar to pumping lemma, but there are some few conditions which we have missed. So let us go back to the parse trees. Let us revisit and talk about the string v, x, right? Altogether, even what is the constraint on vwx? Is there any limit? What about vx only? And few other things. So the first constraint that we gonna prove is that vwx is of length at most n. So vwx is of length at most n. What does it mean? That whatever is the central one, you will have length at most n. Why is it holding? So let us draw the parse tree again. We said that the depth of the parse tree was at least m plus 1, correct? Now, see the repetition, if you just want the repetition, that will hold only for, even if you take from the bottom the last m plus 1 variables. So, this is the last variable. If you take the last m plus 1 variables, if there are m plus 1 variables present here on the path, see the length of the path is at least m plus 1, right? So, how many variables are there? At least m plus 1, because if the length of the path is at least m plus 1, there are total at least m plus 2 nodes. One node is certain to be a terminal, so at least m plus 1 variables are there on the path. You take the last m plus 1 variables, still what will happen? The repetition of two variables will occur, because only m distinct variables are there. So we are not going to consider all variables on that path, but only the variables which are the last m plus 1. If you consider the last m plus 1 variables, what will occur? Still the repetition will occur, still all the property will hold that we discussed previously. But when you take the last m plus 1 variables, what will be the yield of this parse tree at max? So suppose the repetition happens with the due to the sub parse tree rooted at this node, right, which is the first variable in that last m plus 1. Because the subtree is rooted at this A, and the depth of the parse tree is what? There are m plus 1 variables on this path and one terminal. Total depth is m plus 1. What is the maximum you can generate here? The maximum you can generate here is bounded by 2 to the power m. And what is 2 to the power m? Certainly n. So that is why you say that there exists a breakup such that vwx is bounded by n. Correct? See, it might not be bounded for few other breakups, but because of there are at least m plus 1 variables, if you pick the last m plus 1 variables, you will have that there exists a similar kind of breakup where Vwx, the length of this substring, is bounded by n. It is very similar to if you try to connect what we did for the regular languages, that we said that the first cycle will occur due to the first n length string, right? The string might be very large than the pumping length n, but if you pick even the first n symbols of the string, still it will result in a cycle, and you can pump over that cycle. The same kind of phenomena we are realizing here, that although the string might be very large, which is due to a very large pass tree with a huge depth, but even in that, if you take whatever the longest path and take the last m plus 1 variables, still there is some variable which is occurring twice. So due to that, you will still be able to do the breakup of the overall string z into Vwx such that the length is bounded by n. Correct? We can always find such breakup. And the last one is Vx is altogether greater than 0. What does it say? That whenever you have this kind of breakup, right, so this is what you got, this is your V, this is your this is your U, this is your V, this overall is your W, this is X, and this is Y. So this property is saying that this, whatever is the derivation from this part and the derivation from this part, all together the yield, the suffix and prefix cannot go to phi, right, or epsilon. So both of them cannot be epsilon, right? One of them can be epsilon, but at least one of them is a non-epsilon entity. How we prove that? See, the first thing is there is no unit productions. So you cannot have that there was a variable a which derived b, which further derived a itself. Correct? In the pass tree, and such that here you had w, and this part that you are deriving here and this part that you are deriving here, this is epsilon and epsilon. This is not a feasible case because there is no unit production. There is no epsilon production too, so nothing can just vanish away because you have also removed the epsilon productions. So epsilon productions and unit productions are not present in the Chomsky normal form, right? So the only possibility for this ai and aj is the following. Whenever you have this ai appearing at the top, and when you are deriving, so this is your aj, right? Now ai and aj are same. This is the content called as v, this is the content called as x, and this is the part called as w. Now what we are saying, that v and x length is greater than 0. In other sense, both together cannot be epsilon, right? Now certainly both cannot be epsilon because there is no unit production, but can at least one of them be? The answer is yes, because if you have a production of the type ai goes to aix, what will happen when you will try? Or if there is a production of the type ai goes to xai, so whenever you are deriving this ai, what will happen? ai is there. When you use this production, this will give you ai and x, and which is here occurring as aj, correct? A is occurring as aj. Now the subtree that you gonna derive, this will have what? Whatever is the subtree of aj concatenated with the subtree of x. Now this aj rooted subtree will give you w, subtree rooted at x will give you what? X, but the prefix is gone. Now here v is actually epsilon. In the other case, if you use this kind of production, ai, this ai will give you what? This will give you x on this side and this aj on this side. This x will derive something, this aj is deriving something, this aj derivation is giving you w, while this is giving you v, and now here x has become epsilon. But whenever you have ai going to two other variables, what will happen? Whenever this a is going to two variables x and y, and further if you have appearance of maybe a here or a here, the same kind of phenomena will occur. If a is appearing here, maybe the left may go blank, but the right will never go blank. So therefore always this vx together is greater than 0. So let us rewrite this whole thing and try to summarize what all we discussed. So we said that let L is a context free language. If L is a context free language, then what happens? If L is a context free language, I am not writing, but in other words you should understand there exists a context free grammar G for this L, and this G can be converted into G dash in the Chomsky normal form, and for this G dash the number of variables are m. So whenever L is a context free grammar, this all will happen by default. Just like when we had L as a regular language, there is a DFA with a number of states as n. So whenever you have a language which is CFL, in the background this holds. Now whenever L is a CFL, you will have a pumping length. So there exists a constant n, correct? And this n is what? In the background you should understand this n is actually nothing but 2 to the power m. So this constant, which is called as the pumping length, this is nothing but the number 2 to the power number of variables in the corresponding Chomsky normal form of the grammar. So whenever L is CFL, there exists a constant n, which is the pumping length, such that whenever you pick a string z part of L, what is L? It is nothing but L of G dash, and certainly L of G dash. So L is nothing but L of G dash minus epsilon. So whenever you pick a string of length L such that length of z is at least n, what is going to happen? There exists a breakup of z into the following substrings u, v, w, x and y, right? For all strings in set L such that if length of this string is at least n, then there exists a breakup of this string into u, v, w, x, y, such that the following two properties hold. The first one is that Vx is greater than 0. The second one is Vwx is together less than or equals to n, and for all values of I greater or equals to 0, u v to the power I w x to the power I y remains in L. This whole property is called the pumping lemma for context free languages. It is very similar to what we had for the regular languages, and in the background what really happened that we already derived. See, this whole story is built, and in the background we have already proved this pumping lemma that whenever you take n equals to 2 to the power m, then there exists a parse tree of depth at least m plus 1, and whenever you have a parse tree of depth at least m plus 1, there will be a longest path of length at least m plus 1, which will contain at least m plus 1 variables. And if you have at least m plus 1 variables, certainly you will have some variable occurring twice. Even if you take the last m plus 1 variables on that longest path, still the same thing will occur, that one variable is occurring twice. If you take that particular subtree, you will have a breakup like this, which will be like this, and then this breakup is due to what? This breakup is due to the last m plus 1 variables. This is going to still occur. This is your u, this is your v, this is w, this is x, this is y. In this particular breakup of the string, what will hold? Certainly the length of this whole thing will be bounded by n. Why? Because we took the last m plus 1 variables. So overall the depth of the parse tree is what? M plus 1, right? Because if you take m plus 1 variables with a terminal, altogether the length will be m plus 1. So the depth of the parse tree is m plus 1, which will give you the length at least 2 to the power m, which is certainly the same thing, less or equals to n. So that is holding here. Now we understood that because this parse tree is due to Chomsky normal form, so v and x both at the same time cannot go to epsilon. One of them can be epsilon at a given point of time, but not both of them. So certainly this property also holds for that kind of breakup. And we also realize that if you replace this ai and aj, right, at place of ai you replace aj, or at place of aj you keep replacing it by ai few number of times, still the parse tree that you will be getting will be a valid parse tree as per the grammar, and the derived string will be part of the language, and therefore this property holds. So this is the pumping lemma, that whenever you have a language which is CFL, there exists a pumping length n, such that whenever you pick a string in the language of length at least n, there exists a breakup of that string such that these two properties are holding. And finally, for any value of I greater or equals to 0, when you do the pumping over v and x together, still the string remains in the same language. Any doubts? Please ask. Anyone has any questions? Okay, good. So let us try seeing few examples and see how we can utilize pumping lemma. Right. So how you gonna apply pumping lemma? Just like the previous type, right? But let us understand it like it is like a game. So whenever you are using pumping lemma to prove, again the same thing is holding here. Pumping lemma is holding only for the statement, not for the inverse, right, or the converse. So it is to prove that it is again a necessary but not sufficient condition. So any language which follows the pumping lemma property for the context free languages need not be certainly a context free language. It may or may not be, but if it is a context free language, it must follow the property. So if there is any language which is not following this property, certainly it is not a context free language, right? So when you are going to use this to prove that a language is not context free, so let's say that this is you and this is your adversary. This is your adversary. So what you are going to do? The first thing is that you are picking a language, right? So this guy, basically you have picked a language L, which you are trying to prove is not context free. So the language is given to you. Now in the step 2, the chance is given to the adversary to pick any value n. So adversary is setting the pumping length. What does it mean? That you don't know what is the pumping length n. That's what it means, that when your opponent is picking the length n, whatever is the pumping length, you don't know about n. You don't know whether it is a 10 or something, but it is some constant picked by the adversary. Then in the next step, what you gonna do? Assuming any general value of n, you have to define a string from L, right? And you have to define certainly this string somewhere by using n as a parameter. Why n as a parameter in the string? Whenever you are defining z, you have to use this pumping length in the parameter so that you can be sure that length of z is at least n. You don't know the value of n. You have to define a very generic string such that, and this string must be using n as a parameter, so that you are always certain that whatever is the value of n, I don't care, it is always going to give me a string of length at least n. Whenever you pick this, then your adversary gets a chance to break the string, right? So this adversary might break the string z into u, v, w, x, y, but it is going to break the string into this with the two constraints that v, w, x altogether cannot be more than n, and v, x both together cannot be epsilon. So adversary has two constraints to consider while doing the breakup. So adversary might do any possible breakup. So what you have to do, you have to win this whole game by finding a right value of I, right? You have to find some I such that you are able to prove that u, v, I, w, x, I, y doesn't belong to the language. But the problem is you don't know what kind of breakup the adversary has done, right? So that is why you have to consider all possible types of breakup that your adversary can do, and for every possible breakup you have to find such an I. If you are able to do so, then you gonna win the game and you gonna score full marks. So let me rephrase what I am trying to convey. When you are starting to prove any language that it is not context free, you don't know the pumping length. You're gonna assume that there is some pumping length defined by some other person. You just can define a string from the language, and you should be using that length as a parameter, so that you are always certain that the length of your string is greater or equals to that pumping length. So that is in your hand to define the string, but you have to use that pumping length and as a parameter. Now the breakup of the string is not in your hand, so you cannot consider a breakup that okay, for this breakup I am going to find I. Breakup is done by someone else considering these two restrictions. So you have to find a I for every such possible breakup, and for each of the breakups you have to make sure that there exists one such I for which when you do the pumping I times it, the string goes out of the language. If you are able to do so for all possible breakups, that means your adversary, whatever the kind of breakup he or she chooses, you're gonna win the game, and that's what makes sure that you're gonna win and prove that the language is not context free, right? So this is the way you're going to apply, and the similar way you can define the pumping lemma for the regular languages also. It's also adversary kind of game. Okay, let's take one example and try to really do in the same way. So let us take the language L equals to 0 to the power n, 1 to the power n, 2 to the power n, such that n is greater or equals to 1. Okay. Now, suppose that this is the language already given to you. So, what you gonna do? You have already got the language. So, your adversary gets a chance to pick a pumping length. He picks that. Let's say that P is my pumping length. So now the chance comes to you, and what you do, I have to pick a string Z. So I am going to pick 0 to the power P, 1 to the power P, 2 to the power P. Why I defined in terms of P? Because we have to take P as a parameter while defining this string. Now this makes sure that certainly Z is as per the language, so it is part of L. And at the same time, when I take the length of Z, it is 3p, which is certainly greater or equals to p. Right? Because I defined it in terms of p. Now, again, your adversary gets a chance to do the breakup, and you don't know what kind of breakup the adversary might have done. So, what you have to do? For every possible breakup of this string, you have to prove there exists some I. Now, there is a block of P zeros, then there is a block of P ones, and then there is a block of P twos. Correct? What breakup is possible? What different type of breakups are possible for this whole string Z? If you try to see, the breakups should follow the constraint that whenever you are breaking this string into u, v, w, x and y, you have to follow the constraint v, w, x is less or equals to p, because p is the pumping length here, and v and x altogether is greater than up 0. Okay. Now, VWX, you can think of it as a window of size at most P, right? This is my VWX, a possible size of the window, and the window has length at least P. Now, this window can be placed anywhere on this whole string to define the breakup, correct? So, the possibility, if you try to see, because the length of the overall first contiguous set of zeros are P, so the whole window might fit here. The whole window might fit here, or the whole window might fit here. So if you talk about the possibilities, one possibility is like this, the other possibility of the breakup is like this, the other possibility is completely in this, the fourth possibility is like this, the fifth possibility is completely into this. So there are 5 possible cases that this VWX comprises only zeros, VWX comprises zeros and ones, VWX comprises only ones, VWX comprises 1 and 2, VWX comprises only 2s. 5 different cases. But there is a way to really compress these cases into just one. So altogether, these 2 cases can be merged into a single one, these 2 cases can be merged into a single one. And what is that? This says that no 2 2's are present in VWX. And the same way this says that no zeros are present. What about this particular case where we talked about only ones? This can go in either way, right? This satisfies both of them. Now let's take the first case. The second and third can be done in vice versa. So altogether, if your VWX comprises of only zeros and ones, so VWX doesn't contain 2's. Now VWX doesn't contain 2's. When you gonna take the string for I equals to 0, what you gonna get? For I equals to 0, when you apply here, you gonna get UWY, correct? UWY. Because VWX did not contain any 2's, that means what? X did not touch the boundary of 2, right? And in that case, whenever VWX is going to disappear, basically W naught, just V and X, either zeros will be deducted or ones, but at least something will be gone due to this constraint, that the length of Vx is greater than 0. So Vx altogether contains some symbol. It may be a 0, it may be a 1, or it may be both, but something is present in V and X correspondingly. So whenever you take the power I equals to 0, the string becomes UWY, which is having some deduction in the number of zeros or the ones. But 2's were untouched because VWX altogether was not able to reach to the 2's. And therefore, whenever you miss this, the number of zeros or ones will become certainly less than P, either zeros or ones or both of them. Less than P number of those two symbols will appear, while the number of 2's are still standing as P, and therefore you gonna get a string not of the form as per the format of L, and therefore this string will be no more part of the language L. The same holds for the second. If no zeros are present, still in UWX it will contain all P zeros, while the number of ones and 2's might be decreased, and therefore when you take UWY considering the zeroth power of the pumping, then you will find that again the string is out of the language, correct? And the third case that we were saying, it falls on both sides actually. So if you consider specifically for that case that VWX contains only ones, so that means your zeros are outside V and your 2's are outside X, and therefore when you really remove V's and X's, the number of ones gonna go down by some number, while zeros and 2's are both still intact with P, and therefore again it violates the definition of the language and a string goes out of the language. So I have not written the whole thing, I just gave you the idea how you're gonna use. So there are 5 possible breakups in general, but you can club them together in 2 cases only, and for each of the case you have to prove that for I equals to 0 it holds. And therefore for every possible breakup I have one such I, that whenever I pump the string over that I get the string out of the language. So whatever the adversary chooses, I don't care, I will always be able to find such I, and therefore the language doesn't follow the pumping lemma property, and it is therefore not a context free language. This is the way of pumping lemma, but let me tell you the basic concept behind it. Why it is not holding? Because in this language, what you want to do? You want to take a language L such that 0 to the power n, 1 to the power n, 2 to the power n, such that n is greater than or equals to 1. Now here you want to match zeros with ones and with twos. Because we said that we have a stack and you can do some kind of matching, and that's why you were able to deal with the palindromes and other things. But see, when you have 0 to the power n, 1 to the power n, 2 to the power n, so some number of zeros followed by some number of ones followed by some number of twos, and you have to see if all of them are correct. So what you gonna do? First you gonna push all the zeros, and then as you cross the block of zeros and you arrive at the block of ones, you start matching. So you read a 1 here, you pop a 0 out. You read another 1 here, you pop another 0 out, and you keep popping. But when you are popping something, it is getting lost. So all those 0 to the power n, 1 to the power n, you are able to match. But once you reach to the twos, you don't have ones, you don't have zeros, because you just had one stack. And you spent all the zeros for matching with ones. And because there was only one stack, you were unable to store the ones. So with one stack, this machine, whatever you're gonna build, it cannot match two things. It can just do one kind of matching. But whenever it comes to do the matching for two different things, that this is same to this, it can do this or this. It can do some other possibilities, but it cannot do a matching of a number with two different numbers at the same time, or three things together matching. Correct? Now, let us take another example of pumping lemma quickly. So, let's say that L is a language over W belonging to 0, 1 star, such that the length of W is a perfect square. Length of the W is a perfect square, right? So basically it is of the form sum 8 square, something like that, where A is a natural number. Now again the same rule will start. You got the language, your adversary picks a value of n, right? Now what you get to pick? You get to pick a string, correct? You get to pick a string. What string should I pick? Because the string is over zeros and ones, so I can pick any string, right? Any string, but I can pick also just a string over zeros also. So 0 to the power n square will also hold that it will belong to L, because the length of the string is n square. And see, the string that I have defined, this has this pumping length as a parameter, just to make sure that the length of the string, when I take z, it is n square, which is certainly greater or equals to n. So whenever you are defining the string, you have to make sure that you define it in the terms of whatever the pumping length. Now this is what is the string you have chosen. Your adversary comes and divides this string z into some possible breakup, into what? U, V, W, X, Y, such that V, W, X together is bounded by n, and the second thing is V, X is greater than 0. Good. Now if that is the case, then what you can do? You can take U, V square, W, X square, Y. Whatever the breakup, I don't care. I just say that let's take I equals to 2. What happens? I gonna get this string. Now what is the length of this string? If I have to find, it is actually exactly equals to what? It is length of z plus length of Vx, correct? Now length of z plus length of Vx, if I have to find, it is certainly strictly greater than what? Length of Z. Why? Because length of Vx is greater than 0. So length of Z plus Vx is strictly greater than Z. So if you try to understand this, whatever is the value of this string, it is strictly greater than n square. Now, if I see the other side of this is one side, the other side if I am seeing, then this value is less or equals to length of Z plus Vwx, because Vx is certainly less or equals to Vwx. I don't know whether W is for epsilon or not. So this relationship will hold, and this Z is what? Less or equals to n square plus Vwx has a restriction of n. So this n square plus n, it is strictly less than n plus 1 whole square, right? So this n square plus n is the length that you are getting, and this n square plus n is certainly greater than n square, but strictly less than n plus 1 square. So this value is falling in between two perfect squares, therefore this value cannot be a perfect square. Whatever the breakup you take for I equals to 2, it always holds that this string is not part of the language. So therefore, again you got that this language is not a context free language. You can take another language. There is an example given in the book. You can take the other language, L equals to WW, such that W is in 0 1 star. See, if you remember, if I say WWR, it is a context free language. It is actually palindrome. But the interesting part is WW is not. And again the same thing happens. See, when you take WWR and you take the stack, when you are putting the W, it becomes WR on the stack, and then you match WR with WR. So that's why the matching was possible. But when you take W and W, what happens? When you take WW and you put this W in the stack, this becomes WR, and you have W next to match with WR, you cannot do. Because the first symbol on top of the stack is the last symbol of W. And that's why with a stack it is not possible to do the matching. Right. Now, if you try to see that, I am not going in the detail of this, but here you will have multiple possible cases. Right. So again, your adversary can pick a pumping length for you P. Then you are allowed to pick any string. You pick the string Z equals to 0 to the power P, 1 to the power P, 0 to the power P, 1 to the power P. I am free to pick any string. I picked the string such that my W is 0 to the power P, 1 to the power P. So a repetition of that string. Now, why I picked it in this way? And again, if you see, it is taking P as a parameter, so it makes sure that this string is part of L, and also the length of Z is greater. It is actually 4P, which is certainly greater or equals to P. Now, what all possible breakups can be there, that you have to see. So this is block of, so this is zeros, this is ones, this is zeros again, these are ones, and this is if you see, this is my W, this is my other part of W. Now again, if you see what we were talking about, the window, right, this window of length P that you have, which is Vwx, what all possibilities are there? The window is completely constrained here, the window is actually here, the window is completely within this, or the window is like this, or the window is in this, or the window is like this, or finally the window is here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cases. Again, you can club these and make them smaller cases of similar type or something like that, and you will realize, see, the answer is, if it is of this type, what will happen? Vwx, whatever the change that will happen in the number of zeros here, while this part still will have p number of zeros. Here the number of zeros will change, and which will violate the criteria, and you will have lesser number of zeros here, correct? Now if it is between zeros and ones, now you can say that if v's and w's and x's are going to change, so what will happen? Now the change will happen in only this part, only the left part of the string, left half. The number of zeros or ones will alter, while in the right hand side the number of zeros and ones will remain same as p. So therefore again it will not match as per this string, correct? Because you haven't picked any random string, you have picked a contiguous block of zeros and then ones, then zeros and then ones. Similar way, if you pick from the last, so these cases are similar, right? Now suppose that if you pick something from here, right, that is an interesting case. So ones and zeros, and you do the pumping. Now again, when you are pumping here, either you are pumping ones or zeros down or up, still the number of zeros here and the number of ones are not moving. So if you are changing anything here or both places, still it is not having any effect on the other places, and these places are untouched from this VWX. So I am just giving you the concept. This is not the way you are going to write it. You have to take case by case, and you have to discuss why if you change anything here, the string will go out of the language, and for which value of I. So I recommend you to go read the book, revise the concepts, and really do it. Is there any question? If none, then we'll be ending the class today at this point of time. Next, there are some properties about the context free languages, and then we will talk about push down automata and the equivalence between push down automata and context free languages in the upcoming classes. So if there will be any questions or anything, feel free to send me. Thank you so much. See you.